Thank you for joining us for the Instructional Materials Review and Approval, or IMRA, Mathematics Quality Rubric Focus Group. So my name is Nick Keith. I'm the Executive Director of High Quality Instructional Materials Implementation Supports, and I'm part of the team that's joining you here today to walk you through this process of gathering feedback on these quality rubrics, which will inform our final drafts. Our agenda for today, I'm going to give you some background and context on House Bill 1605 and the criteria for IMRA, that Instructional Materials Review and Approval process, take you through the timeline for the quality rubric development, and then we'll walk through the design of these rubrics, which will be important as you start to provide us with feedback on those today. Then we'll briefly discuss the focus group feedback process, and then the majority of our time will be you having some dedicated protected work time to go through each section of the rubric and provide us with your feedback. And then at the end, we'll talk about a few next steps. Let's start with an introduction to House Bill 1605 and the Instructional Materials Review and Approval, or IMRA, criteria. In our current process with the State Board of Education for reviewing and approving instructional materials, there are currently 3 criteria. And the last set of materials to go through this process were those that were in Proclamation 2024. So that current criteria includes the standards alignment percentage. So the materials have to cover a minimum percent of the standards as determined by the SBOE. The materials cannot contain factual errors. That's that second light blue box. And then the third criteria is that materials have to meet certain physical and electronic specifications. So those are currently the 3 criteria in the SBOE process. You may be familiar with Texas Resource Review, or TRR. That rubric runs alongside the SBOE process, but in the current iteration of Proclamation 24, it is separate. So these are the 3 SBOE criteria. Texas Resource Review exists outside of these. But now, with House Bill 1605, and the new Instructional Materials Review and Approval process, or IMRA, we've now added additional criteria for the review of instructional materials. So we still have those 3 light blue boxes that were part of the SBOE process before: standards alignment, factual errors, physical and electronic specifications. But now we have 3 additional criteria that are represented here in dark blue. So 1, we have the quality review, and that will be our focus for today. We have a review for suitability and appropriateness. That is the purview of the SBOE, and so we won't be focusing on that today. And then we have the parent portal requirement, where to be considered a high-quality material on the SBOE approved list, materials must have a parent portal to meet certain transparency requirements. So the rubrics that you'll be reviewing today and providing us with feedback on are part of the quality review process. And the way you can think of the quality review, I mentioned Texas Resource Review on the last slide. You can think of the Texas Resource Review stood outside of the SBOE process previously. Now you can think of it as coming under the entire umbrella of this review and approval process that is managed by the State Board of Education. And so as part of the quality review process, the SBOE must approve the quality review rubrics that you will be providing feedback and input on today. So let's take a look at the quality rubric development timeline, and then we'll go through how these rubrics are actually designed. So this is a timeline of 2023, starting with the passage of House Bill 1605 and running through December of this year. So you can see here, the team at TEA of content experts has been working during this period to prepare rubric frameworks and drafts. As part of this process, this included alignment with the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, research and feedback from the SBOE September 2023 meeting, the research-based instructional strategies, or the RBs, then alignment with the House Bill 3 reading academies and mathematics academies. This also included crosswalks with existing materials review rubrics that were used as part of Texas Resource Review. And those rubrics were developed with extensive external stakeholder feedback as well. So we felt like we had a good foundation to start to develop these frameworks and drafts. So now we're entering into the feedback stage. So we presented the drafts of these rubrics to the SBOE at their meeting last week to begin their feedback process. We have external content expert working groups. They currently have the drafts of these rubrics and are testing them for us, and they'll be providing us with feedback on their usability. That will help inform the final drafts. And then we are currently here in this process where we are hosting focus groups for educators, publishers, and of course, ESC content specialists. At the same time, the public comment period is open and will be open for anyone to provide feedback on these rubrics through December 15th. So that's where we are in terms of development and feedback. And we're hosting focus groups. We started with reading language arts yesterday. We have math today. And then we have math and reading language arts next Monday and Tuesday as well. So if you have someone on your team who would like to attend a focus group and provide feedback, we'll give you some additional information at the end on where they can find those registration links and sign up to attend. So now let's move into how these rubrics are designed. So in just a few slides, we'll be sharing the link to the K-12 math rubric with you, but I just want to set up the high-level structure before we open those up and start going through them. So since these rubrics are part of the Instructional Materials Review and Approval process, or IMRA, it's helpful to just reset on what we mean when we say instructional materials. So when we talk about instructional materials, we're referring to two things: the materials that students use to learn and practice, and the materials that teachers use to plan and teach. So when we take the quality rubrics that you'll be looking at today, this is what we're reviewing as part of this quality review process. So then the design of the quality review rubrics is really based on three things, and this makes up the research base that supports the development of these rubrics. First, what educators tell us they need to effectively implement instructional materials. Second, the evidence that exists from the research about the best ways to teach each subject. And third, the evidence that exists, again, from the research on the most effective ways for learning to occur. So these three things make up the research base for the quality review rubrics. So from that research base, the quality review rubrics are each designed with two categories. I'm going to lay those out for you here and tell you what the purpose of each of those categories is. So first, we have the implementation quality category. Implementation quality is similar for all content areas, and implementation quality is based on what do teachers tell us they need in order to effectively implement instructional materials. So when you look at the reading language arts rubrics and the mathematics rubrics, you'll see the implementation quality category is similar across both of those content areas. And the question that we're trying to answer here is, are the components that support effective implementation present in the instructional materials? So that's the goal of the implementation quality category. Again, similar across all content areas. The second category is what we refer to as the learning quality category. And learning quality is unique to the subject that is being reviewed. So if you put the reading language arts rubric and the math rubric next to each other, the learning quality category will look very different, because this is based on what is the most effective way to teach the subject and what do we know from the research about the most effective ways for learning to occur. So we're trying to answer two questions here in this category. Are the components of the materials quality and aligned with research on the best ways to teach the subject? And when taught as designed, do the components support a student reaching grade level proficiency on the standards? Because ultimately, that's the purpose of a quality review. We move beyond just are the standards present in the instructional materials to how well are they designed? Are the materials quality and aligned with the research on the best ways to teach each subject? Ultimately, the goal is to support students in reaching grade level proficiency on the standards. So that's the highest level of organization of these rubrics: an implementation quality category and a learning quality category. So I'm going to do one double click, and then we'll share the link to the rubric in the chat, let you open that up and start to take a look at it. So it's important to know that each category has multiple sections. So in implementation quality, there are 3 sections. And then in learning quality, there are also 3 sections in the math rubric. That will look different based on the content being reviewed. But for the rubric that you'll be looking at today, there are 3 sections in learning quality. Then, when you open up the rubric, you'll see that categories and sections are color-coded in the rubrics for easy identification. So in just a moment, when you open up the link to the rubric, you'll see that everything that's color-coded in purple is part of implementation quality, and everything that is color-coded in green is part of learning quality. So the link to the Math K-12 rubric is in the chat. So I'll go ahead and give you about 60 seconds to open up that rubric and just identify those 2 high-level categories, implementation quality and learning quality. Then I'll come back on and we'll continue going through the structure of the rubric. So go ahead and take 60 seconds to open that up now. So now I'll continue going through the structure of the rubric. You can definitely keep that open or watch the slides on the screen as we walk through the rest of the design of these rubrics. So it's important to know now that each section has indicators and reviewer guidance. So in this example on the screen, the section is productive struggle. That's the 6th section in the rubric overall. The indicator is 6.1, that's student self-efficacy. And then the reviewer guidance bullets are 6.1a and 6.1b. Reviewer guidance provides the look-fors for reviewers to gather evidence for during the quality review process. So really, reviewer guidance is where the rubber meets the road and where those concrete look-fors in the instructional materials are provided for reviewers. So let me go ahead and put all of that on one slide, and then you may want to take a screenshot of this that'll help you navigate the rubrics as you're providing feedback. So at the highest level, we have categories. There are 2 of those, implementation quality, learning quality. Then each category is broken into sections. Sometimes sections will have subsections. So the math rubrics do not have subsections, but that's just important to note if, for example, you look at the reading language arts rubric. Then we have indicators and we have reviewer guidance. So learning quality is a category. Within learning quality, balance of conceptual and procedural understanding is a section. Within that section, 5.1, development of conceptual understanding is an indicator. And then 5.1, A, B, C, and D are the reviewer guidance. So let me give you about 20 seconds. If you'd like to take a quick screenshot of that, it'll be helpful to have handy as you navigate through the rubrics. Now let's move into the process that we'll use to make sure that we are gathering everyone's feedback as part of the focus group today. So in the chat, there's a link to the IMRA Math K-12 rubric focus group feedback form. So if you'll go ahead and open that form up and fill out the first 4 fields at the top with your name, email address, employer, and role. You're going to keep this open our entire time together, and then you'll submit this form at the end. So let me go ahead and give you about 45 seconds to fill in those top 4 fields. And then before we move into the feedback portion, I'd just like to share with you 4 questions for consideration as you're providing feedback on the rubrics. Of course, we are open to any feedback you have on the rubrics, but really 4 things to consider that are really helpful to our team as we make updates to the rubrics. So first bullet, are there indicators or guidance that should be added and why? Second bullet, are there indicators or guidance that should be removed and why? Third, is there guidance that's duplicated between sections that could be consolidated? So one thing we want to do is make sure that these rubrics are as efficient as possible. And so if there's something being scored in multiple places, we want to be aware of that so we can attempt to consolidate that. Then the fourth bullet, is there guidance that is ambiguous and should be clarified? So as you go through a section, if you come up on a reviewer bullet or guidance that is not clear, we need you to note that in the feedback form and then submit that at the end. That just tells us that that's some language that we may need to clarify. So then what we'll be doing for the rest of our time together is we'll be going section by section. I'll give you a high-level overview of the question that we're trying to answer in that section of the rubric, along with a brief synopsis of the criteria. Then we'll set a timer for 10 minutes and give you some protected time to read through the rubrics in depth and use the feedback form to submit your feedback. If it's easier for you to go through the rubric and make notes separately and then submit that focus group feedback form later today, you are more than welcome to do that. I would just ask you to work in the way that works best for you. So let's start with the implementation quality category. And you can see the 3 sections there on the left in purple: intentional instructional design, progress monitoring, and supports for all learners. So if you'll go ahead and locate the intentional instructional design section, there should be section 1 in your rubric. I'll give you just a minute to find that. So in intentional instructional design, the question that we're trying to answer is, are the materials well designed at the course, unit, and lesson level? So this section starts with a look at the course level, where are standards taught, how is the course designed overall? And then it moves to the unit level, where educators need materials that build their background knowledge to teach the unit effectively. There should also be an overview of assessments along with home to school connections. At the lesson level, we're looking for comprehensive, detailed, and structured lessons that have everything a beginning teacher would need to teach effectively, and that an experienced teacher could customize based on their expertise. Then finally, the final indicator in this section is about visual design, that the visual design should support students engaging with the concept and should not be distracting. So what we'll do is we'll set a timer on screen for 10 minutes and give you time to go through each indicator and reviewer guidance bullet in intentional instructional design. You can add your feedback to the feedback form, but you'll submit at the very end. If you have any questions as you go through the process, you can message us directly in the chat and we'll be happy to respond to that. So let's go ahead and take 10 minutes on intentional instructional design. The next section that we'll move into in the implementation quality category is progress monitoring. So the question we're trying to answer here is, do the materials support educators and students through frequent strategic opportunities to monitor and respond to student progress? So really, progress monitoring is all about instructional assessments. So materials should include aligned instructional assessments and progress monitoring tools in a few different varieties. So diagnostics to identify what students already know, formatives to identify where students may need additional support, and summative assessments to identify if a student has reached proficiency on a grade level standard. But in addition to assessments, materials should also include guidance to help educators respond to the information collected through these assessments. So this includes how to interpret the data efficiently and effectively, how to use tasks and activities to respond to student trends and performance, and how to support individual students based on their needs. So again, we'll go ahead and set a timer for 10 minutes and allow you time to work through the progress monitoring section. I'll come back on and let you know when there's 3 minutes and 1 minute remaining on this section. Next, we'll move into the supports for all learners section of the rubric. The question we're trying to answer here is, do the materials provide supports to help educators effectively teach all learners? So the guidance in this section includes differentiation and scaffolds. So supports for students who haven't yet reached grade level proficiency includes things like pre-teaching and embedded supports for vocabulary development. Then the materials should also support teachers with effective instructional methods, linking to what students have already learned, flexible grouping. And then this also includes our supports for multilingual learners that are aligned with the ELPs, embedded throughout the materials, and designed to support dual language immersion programs as well. So we'll go ahead and give you 10 minutes to work your way through the supports for all learners section and provide feedback using that feedback form. Up the implementation quality category. So we went through intentional instructional design, progress monitoring, and supports for all learners. And now we're going to move into the learning quality category. So just as a reminder, we've added those 4 bullets up there for your consideration about indicators or guidance being added or removed, guidance that is duplicated and could be consolidated, and guidance that it is ambiguous and should be clarified. So just to keep those in mind as we continue to provide feedback on this next category. Let's move into the first section in the learning quality category, which is depth and coherence of key concepts. The question we're trying to answer here is, do the materials meet the rigor of the standards while connecting concepts across grade levels and courses? One addition here as we talk through the learning quality sections is just a few citations from the research about why this is included as part of the rubric. And so you can see the reference from the National Mathematics Advisory Panel there at the top. A focused, coherent progression of mathematics learning with an emphasis on proficiency with key topics should become the norm in elementary and middle school mathematics curricula. And by the term focused, the authors mean that curriculum must include and engage with adequate depth the most important topics underlying success in school algebra. So that's really the basis for the idea of depth and coherence of key concepts. So the guidance in this section focuses on materials being designed to focus on the primary focal areas of the grade level or course as outlined in the standards. Questions and tasks should progressively increase in rigor throughout the year, which leads students to the depth of understanding required of the content standards. Then materials should demonstrate coherence through a logically sequenced and connected scope and sequence. So the design should support students in connecting what they have previously learned to what they are currently learning. So we'll go ahead and set a timer for 10 minutes and give you that time to read closely through the depth and coherence of key concepts section of the rubric. As we continue to work our way through the learning quality category, the next section is balance of conceptual and procedural understanding. The question we're trying to answer in this section is, are the materials designed to balance conceptual understanding, procedural skill, and fluency? And just going back to the National Research Council research, to be mathematically proficient, students must develop conceptual understanding, procedural fluency, strategic competence, adaptive reasoning, and productive disposition, which is the goal of this section. So the guidance here, the material should develop students' ability to understand relationships between mathematical ideas, patterns, and procedures. Then, in addition to building that conceptual understanding, materials should support students' development of fluency and automaticity as appropriate to the grade level standards. Then finally, academic mathematical language should be developed throughout the materials using visuals and manipulatives. So we'll go ahead and give you 10 minutes to dig into the balance of conceptual and procedural understanding section and provide feedback using that feedback form. Then moving on now to our last section of the K through 12 Math IMRA rubric, this is productive struggle. So with productive struggle, the question we're looking to answer is, do the materials provide support to students and teachers to encourage persevering through problem solving and making sense of mathematics? So looking at the citation from NCTM at the bottom there, productive struggle comprises the work that students do to make sense of a situation and determine a course of action when a solution strategy is not stated, implied, or immediately obvious. Every student must have the opportunity to struggle with challenging mathematics and to receive support that encourages their persistence without removing the challenge. And that's really the basis of this section. So the guidance here is that materials should support students in seeing themselves as mathematical thinkers who can solve problems and make sense of mathematics. And then materials should also support teachers in facilitating the sharing of students' approaches to problem solving and in supporting productive struggle. So this final section is a bit shorter than the others in the rubric, so we're just going to take 7 minutes here. And then when we come back, we'll wrap up with the bottom of that feedback form and just give a few next steps before we close out our focus groups for today. So I'll go ahead and set 7 minutes to give you a chance to review and provide feedback on the productive struggle section of the rubric. So now we've wrapped up both categories of the IMRA K-12 mathematics rubric. We gave feedback on the implementation quality category and sections, the first 3 in purple, and then the last 3 sections were the learning quality category. And so what we'd like you to do now is if you'll go to the bottom of this feedback form, there are 3 drop-down questions there. If you'll take 30 seconds, answer those, and if you're ready to submit, go ahead and click submit on that form. If you'd like a little bit of additional time to go back and add additional feedback, you can certainly do that and submit it later today or by the end of the day today. So I'll go ahead and give you 30 seconds to answer those questions at the bottom of the form and submit your feedback. Then just a few next steps to be aware of. So like I mentioned at the beginning of our time together, we had reading language arts focus groups yesterday, mathematics today, and then we'll have mathematics again next Monday, November 27th, and reading language arts groups on next Tuesday, which is November 28th. These are all formatted the same, so if you attended today, you don't need to attend another session. We'll be going through the same process, just with a different group of folks. And we also have public comment open right now. So for anyone who's not able to attend a focus group, they can submit feedback by December 15th by filling out the public comment submission form. So there are links to that in the chat right now for you to access. And then I'm also going to show you one other way that you can access those, even if you don't have access to the chat from today. So everything you need regarding IMRA quality rubric comments and feedback is currently in an announcement banner at texasresourcereview.org. So if you go to Texas Resource Review, at the top, you'll see that there are links to the English language arts and Spanish language arts rubrics, as well as a K-12 mathematics rubric from today. You can click on the public comment link to provide public comment through that submission form, again through December 15th. Or if you know of anyone who would like to attend one of the focus groups next week on either Monday or Tuesday, they can click here, and that will give them access to the registration links for these focus groups. So again, we strongly encourage anyone who has an interest in these rubrics to provide feedback. What we'll be doing is we'll be analyzing and synthesizing the feedback from focus groups, the State Board of Education, and public comment. We'll be bringing those back to the SBOE in December to provide them with additional information on the direction of these rubrics. And then that feedback will be integrated into those final drafts. And our goal is to have the final drafts of these rubrics approved by the end of January, so we can begin this first IMRA process early next year. So I'd just like to personally say thank you for your time. And on behalf of the team, we know that for most of you, this is your Thanksgiving break, and you chose to spend a little bit of time with us today providing feedback on the rubric. So we greatly appreciate you, your expertise, and have a safe and happy holidays.